Hi there, it's Rick Hansen, and this is episode number 20 of the Amazing Greats podcast. Awesome life stories from people you know, from books and movies and music and sports and business. Today, our Amazing Greats host, our special guest host, is Clem Daniels. Thanks to our mentor and friend George Tolles for lining up today's guest. In fact, I'm going to use George's exact words of introduction. Here it comes. After 2 tours and 50 combat missions in Iraq, Ed Rush returned to civilian life. And with his resume of bronco-busting an FA-18 jet, how many careers might be waiting for him back home on LinkedIn? But by translating his high-altitude track record into this white-knuckled demands of corporate and entrepreneurial life, he's excelled at speaking and writing and delivering a message that will change the world. He's a 5-time #1 best-selling author and Amazon's #1 business author. Well, what would you expect from a Marine, right? Here's the Ed Rush story. Clem, take it away.
Thank you, Rick. Today our guest is a guiding light, a beacon of inspiration, a former F-18 Top Gun fighter pilot. 5 times #1 best-selling author. Host of a podcast, Ed Talks Live, a coach, consultant to many companies, celebrities, and people like you and me, helping them to be better in business, be better human beings, be better at marketing. You can always do that. Ed also helps you expand your life, take control, and have fun. I welcome to Amazing Greats, Mr. Ed Rush Jr.
Man, I finally made it on this show, Clem. Thank you. It's an honor to be here, dude.
Well,
I've been down in my basement since 5 o'clock this morning doing push-ups and pounding coffee ready for our interviews. So I'm ready to go, man. We're going to put the afterburners in well, it wasn't really 5, by the way. It was more like 7, but I do have a 3-year-old. So she's my alarm clock in the morning. So I'm ready to put the throttles up in afterburner and get this thing off the runway. Let's do it, man. All
righty. Well, we have a lot to talk about because, well, you're kind of an interesting person. You've got a few things, a few irons in the fire. Let's go back. Okay, let's start at the beginning, I suppose. You flunked kindergarten. Come on.
Yeah, I failed kindergarten. I always tell people that because when I go speak, I'll get off stage. I teach on communication, persuasion, productivity, how to grow your business, money making, marketing. Those are the topics that I often speak. And the market that I speak to most are entrepreneurs, speakers, authors, coaches, consultants, experts, people who run small businesses and want to change the world. And a lot of times I'll give a strategy, and my strategies frankly are very simple. They have to be because I'm a very simple person, frankly. I'm not an engineer. I didn't study complicated math. In fact, people think because I flew in a fighter aircraft that I needed to be really good at math. And I always tell people to fly a fighter like the F-18, you really only need to know 3 sentences. And I can teach you the sentences. And they go like this. When you push the stick forward, the houses get bigger. When you pull the stick back, the houses get smaller. And when you push that little red button on the stick, all the houses go away. That's literally all you need to know about flying the F-18. And so it's not a complicated thing. And my success principles aren't complicated either. But often I'll get off stage, Clem, and someone will come up to me and they'll go, well, sure, that's easy for you to say. You're the fighter pilot guy. And so now I tell the story about when I failed kindergarten. And this is not a made-up story. This is true. I truly failed at the very first grade, that you can fail. And kindergarten isn't hard. I've had now 3 of my 4 kids successfully graduate from kindergarten. My first daughter graduated kindergarten with honors, which is hysterical for me. But, this isn't complicated subject matter. We're talking about stacking blocks, not eating the glue. And I somehow failed that, and I learned really early on in life. I really did learn early on in life that I was going to have to take a new approach to becoming successful at what I wanted to do. And so I made a rule for myself really early on. And it's a rule that I still live by today. And that rule goes like this. I find successful people and I do what they do. And then I don't do what they don't do. And then I find unsuccessful people and I just flip it. I do what they don't do and I don't do what they do. And it is fundamentally one of the simplest things I could ever teach, but one of the most profound if you follow the direction that you want to go. So for example, Right now, I've got some clients and some friends and mentors who are, they're 9-figure type of people. These are folks who are worth $100 million plus, very successful people, written New York Times best-selling books, own 1,000-acre ranches in some place in the United States. And these are the people that I look up to, or I would like to be. And I look carefully and closely. How do they think? How do they act? How do they treat their family? How do they manage their time in their day? How do they look at money and investing money? Where do they allocate their assets? And not that they're perfect, because nobody's perfect, but what I find is, if I look at successful people and begin to pattern my way of life and thinking after them, I'll be successful too. And that has been fundamentally a principle that worked for me. So yeah, going back to the kindergarten story, I love telling that story because it just shows people, hey, this is a real strategy implemented by a real person. By the way, the rest of the story, I did graduate finally from kindergarten the second time. I actually made it all the way through college, which is amazing to think about. I graduated from a pretty good school, William and Mary down in Virginia. I was on a baseball scholarship. I left my senior year, went into the Marine Corps, ended up doing quite well in the airplane, ended up as a Top Gun student and graduate, an instructor in our weapons school.
Let me stop you right there. Let's talk about going back to what you just said about, kindergarten and that whole story around that, and being influenced by those people that are highly successful and picking up their traits. You had 2 members in your family that were doing that to you every single day, right? Your dad was a nationally recognized football coach and NBA official, was head of the officials for several years, is now coaching football still. Again, went back to doing that. Your mom was 3 years national college champion in basketball. She won 3 national championships, and she's also inducted into the Hall of Fame. I mean, the pressure.
Well, it's interesting because I don't look back on there being pressure. I have a friend of mine whose name is Joe Madden. He's the manager of the California Angels baseball team, and he used to be the Cubs manager when they won the World Series. And Joe has a phrase that he says, he tells his players, never let the pressure exceed the pleasure. In other words, it should always be more pleasurable than it should be pressurable. And I have to say, my life largely has been like that. I was literally born in the middle of a national championship run in my mom's basketball team. In 1972, she won her first national championship as a basketball coach of this tiny little Catholic school in Pennsylvania. And then as that was pregnant with me. And then as I was only about 5 months old, she won her second national championship. So I give myself all the credit for the championships, frankly. I think it was me coming along that turned the corner on that. But, it's interesting growing up in that environment. I grew up on team buses, with extraordinarily successful teams. I mean, I'm talking about a women's basketball team in the 1970s, which, by the way, women's basketball is like unheard of in the 70s. A women's basketball team that would get 20,000 fans to their game. And then an hour afterwards, there would be a men's game that would have about 1,000 people at it. That's how unbelievable this movement was in Pennsylvania around my mom. It was called Immaculata College, this tiny little Catholic school out in the boondocks outside of Philadelphia. And so, I grew up, and my dad was in professional sports, as you know, as a referee. So I grew up around excellence. I mean, I would go to basketball games at age 5 and shake hands with people like Julius Erving, Dr. J, and think nothing of it. I mean, honestly, I thought nothing. I would hang out with his sons, during the game, and then shake hands with Dr. J afterwards and say good game, and then go home. And literally never crossed my mind to get an autograph. I just was around people like that. And so I was really blessed to be able to see success in action, not only with my parents. My parents were phenomenal, not only parents, but people, and also leaders in their respective niches. But I was able to see excellence and see what it looked like to be at the top of your game, and so it was natural for me to move into something like flying fighter jets or something like that, where I could have the opportunity to really excel in that way too.
Yeah. Well, how did you do that? I mean, I think if I were in your shoes, I'd kind of maybe join the military just to get away from that, just because the bar was set so high and you would never be able to please them. You'd never, you know what I mean? How did you get in the military and why?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So I joined the Marine Corps on a whim. And to be fair, my parents were very good leaders as parents. I think I put more pressure on myself than they did, frankly. They've been around sports enough to know success and failure. And, they were nervous during my football and baseball games, but I for sure put a lot more pressure on me than they ever did. And I'm thankful that they led me the way that I did.
Yeah.
So my last year in college as a baseball player, I just had a whim. I went and talked to a recruiter, the Marine recruiter, and the Marine recruiter looked at me and said, "Have you ever thought about flying airplanes?" Now, I've always wanted to fly airplanes. I flew an airplane when I was 11 years old with this crusty old pilot who let me take control of the airplane and fly, and I was hooked. And then the movie Top Gun came out when I was in high school, and I thought to myself, "Oh, that ruins it. Everyone's going to want to do this now." And I guess I was wrong. Not everyone still, but I got when I was 21, I met a Marine recruiter. He said, "Would you like to fly airplanes?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'd love to fly airplanes." And there's a very specific and little known program in the Marine Corps called PLC, where they can give you a guarantee that you're going to go to flight school. I'd never heard of that before. He said, "Well, if you can pass this test, I can guarantee that you'll go to flight school." And I thought, well, shoot, I'll study for the test. And I did. And I passed the test and I did quite well on that test. Next thing you know, I'm at Marine Corps boot camp, which at the time felt like a dumb decision. Like, I'm in the middle of between my junior and senior year now in a 10-week boot camp with a Marine drill instructor yelling at me. And Marine boot camp is no joke, And but I ended up in the Marine Corps. My parents, by the way, had no idea what I was doing. Nobody in my family had served in the military. Nobody, except for my grandmother's brother, essentially my great uncle, who flew fighters in World War II. He took off in North Africa in 1942 and was never seen again. And so the only experience in my family of a military person was Uncle George, who passed away in an airplane. And now this idiot is, wanting to go fly airplanes again. Has he ever learned our lesson of our family? So nobody was happy about that. My parents and my grandparents cried at my commissioning ceremony. And the gunnery sergeant who was there looked at me and he said, I just love seeing those tears of joy on behalf of the family. I said, "Hey, Gunny, those are not tears of joy. Just so you know, they think I'm about to die." I'm not kidding you. They all thought he's dead, so, and I didn't die. So there. So even though I was in combat in Iraq, I came home in one piece. Thank God.
Tell me about how you felt on your first flight.
My first mission in Iraq.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, nothing can prepare you for being in a place where people shoot at you. Okay. So I know some of your viewers and listeners have been in fights. I know some of you maybe even have been shot at before. When the first rocket hits, something changes inside you. Let me tell you, when I was in Iraq the first time, I was sitting inside of a planning area and I heard this noise that is so ingrained in my memory that I can hear it exactly the way that I heard it before, which was we had an inbound rocket attack at our base in Iraq. And so this noise comes in. We've got all these seasoned pilots. I'm in my second day in Iraq, and everybody dives underneath the tables. And I'm a Captain Rush is sitting there like, "Hey, where'd everybody go?" I'm like sitting in my chair. Everybody's and the guy down here is like, "You might want to get down." I'm like, "Why?" And he goes, "It's a rocket attack, idiot." So I dove under the table, which it's a wooden table, so it's not really going to help you that much. Yeah, right. And as those rockets hit, now they didn't hit our compound, but they hit fairly close. And as those things hit, I'll never forget the feeling. I was so pissed. I'm like, somebody's shooting at me. Somebody's shooting it. So that feeling is unbelievable. Now, as far as I know, I was not shot at during any of my combat missions. And I say as far as I know because a lot of times people are shooting at airplanes and you can't see it and they never get to you anyway. And so I don't know if that happened or not. I flew a little over 50 combat hours in Iraq, but the first takeoff is probably the most interesting. So what you do, you're in this massively loaded airplane. It's full of gas, about 14,000 pounds of fuel. You've got 2 tanks full of gas. You've got rockets on one side and bombs on the other side, and you got guns rounds in the middle of the airplane. So you're quite heavy airplane. It's not the screaming F-18 that you see coming back in because those are very, very light. And so what you do, we have this huge runway, 14,000 feet. Iraq is a very, very hot place. 2 varies doesn't even capture it. It's like very, very, very 12 times hot place. And so it makes it more difficult for an airplane to get off the ground just because the air is a lot lighter. So what we would do is we would start at the end of the runway, go full afterburner, start to accelerate. After about 2,000 or 3,000 feet, the front end of the airplane would come off. About another 1,000 feet, the back end of the airplane would come off. Normally, you just take off directly into the air, put the gear up, put the flaps up, and start to go out to the direction that you're going. But in Iraq, what you do is you stay about 5 feet over the runway. So you actually take off and then you level off, and you literally stay. You can see the lines on the runway. You're so close, and you literally fly 5 to 10 feet over the runway in full afterburner until you get to about 450, maybe 500 knots, which is about 600 miles an hour. It's fast, okay? And the reason you do that is because if you just take off normally, you're essentially an easy target for somebody with a shoulder-mounted system. You don't have enough airspeed really to maneuver, but if you stay low, they can't really see you. And then at that point, when you have 400 or 500 miles an hour, 600 miles an hour, you literally pull your airplane directly, point up straight directly up into the sky, and fly as quickly to 10,000 feet as you can. 10,000 being a particularly safe altitude in Iraq. Most of the weapon systems that could come against us were sort of small arms, AAA, and infrared launched shoulder-mounted systems, which some can go above 10,000, but that's about an altitude at which you're pretty safe. So we would fly really low, really fast, pull the nose completely up, straight up, and then at that point, I would literally look over my shoulder right and left to make sure that I wasn't getting shot at, climb through 10,000 feet, join up with my wingman, and then the rest of the flight, frankly, was pretty easy, except for coming into land. In fact, the rest of the flight was so easy that I would oftentimes, in the middle of the flight, 2-3 hours, open up a Red Bull and sip a Red Bull in the middle of the night while I was watching out for our friendly convoys. So there wasn't a lot of action for a fighter pilot in 2003, 2004 Iraq, except for the random rocket attack. So.
In your book, The 21-Day Miracle, there's that whole story told in length. And it's in reference to, part of that 20-day process, 3 days in the Marines, at one point in that 3-day period, first 3 days, you were contemplating taking your toe into a brick wall to get out of it and honorably discharged, so to say. And but you didn't. And when you were also in training with the Marines, when you were in training for flight and everything, that was pretty intense as well. And then, of course, the first flight that you had in combat in Iraq, it was like none other that you ever had. The process of changing yourself and developing and growing and the mindset, this is what you are so good at talking about. It all as part of your consulting, your marketing training. It's the 21-Day Miracle. I think is a fabulous book that really gets into detail of this.
Thank you, by the way. Very few interviews do people know the book as well as you do, Clem. So thank you for taking the time to understand the material. My viewpoint is really simple. We've been told pretty much our whole life that in the race between the tortoise and the hare, the tortoise wins because, as we were told growing up, slow and steady wins the race. And then I became a fighter pilot, and I realized, nope, slow and steady doesn't win that race, not in an airplane. And then I became an entrepreneur and an author and a speaker and a coach and a consultant and a parent. And then I realized slow and steady doesn't win that race either. In fact, slow and steady doesn't win any race. I mean, we have a garden sitting out the window that I'm looking at my office right here, and we have rabbits that come into the garden. The other day, my son said, "Hey, Dad, I got a rabbit cornered in the garden." And I'm not kidding you. The moment he said that, I saw this rabbit jump through the fence and run down my driveway at about 1,000 miles an hour because rabbits are very fast. And if I took that rabbit and I put that rabbit next to an actual turtle and I gave it a finish line, no matter how near or far that finish line was, 100 times out of 100, that rabbit would win that race. 100 times out of 100. And so for some reason, we let these people tell us this story about this tortoise that it sounds fun, but it's not true. And what is true is speed wins. Speed wins. As an entrepreneur, as a conscious-minded, connected person, as a person who wants to see the world change, as a speaker, author, coach, consultant, business owner, parent, friend, speed wins. My clients who spend a lot of time thinking and planning and scheming, but never taking action, never see a result, because by the time you take action, the target's moved. Now you're shooting at a target that's not there. So my approach to business is what a lot of people would call an MVP, minimum viable product. If I'm looking at going into a new marketplace or launching a new product or creating a book or creating a message, I will put something out there almost immediately on that topic and see what the response is. So for example, right now, Clem, I'm working on my 6th book. And one of the things I'm going to do with my 6th book is I'm actually going to do a 2-day event before I write my 6th book. The reason I'm going to do that is because I already know the content. I already know what I'm going to teach. It's a totally new topic, not new, but fun and a little bit different topic. But if I go for 2 days and deliver, and I have great events with the folks that follow me, we have a lot of fun, and they get me and I get them, and those are good events. But here's what I know. If I make a point, sometimes you think your points are amazing and they're not. And sometimes you think of something that isn't even that interesting and people go wild, So as I'm teaching this, I'm looking at the audience reaction. And if I say something and then the crowd goes crazy, I'm like, oh, that's a really good one. I like that one. That's good. Now I might say something else. People might look at me like I just grew an asparagus out of my forehead. And then I have to explain it again. Then I have to explain it again. I realize, oh, maybe that's not a point that I want to have in this book. So my point on that is, I'm looking at how quickly can I get something amazing into the market. Well, if I do a 2-day event and teach it for a little while, man, I can turn that into content really quickly, write my book and get it out, and know for sure that the content of the book is going to be something that people are going to react to. Yeah. Now, take it on the other side, and I'll say this for 20 seconds, then I'll pass it back to you. On the other side, a lot of people sit around for 3 years thinking about this book. Finally, they write the book, but by the time they write the book, the market has shifted so completely that people aren't interested in that topic anymore. And if you did it the ready, fire, aim approach, you would have adjusted to that on the way.
I attended one of your seminars, The Big Pivot. And I thought the concept, first of all, the title just right on, because we were going into some pretty heavy COVID moments. In fact, it was quite brave of you, I thought, to do that then with live people.
Yeah, and we did a live event in June of 2020.
Yeah, I know. Would you do that today? Would you? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, heck yeah, I would have done it today. So here's
I hope no one got ill from it. It looked like everyone you were separated and spaced out, and you were certainly aware of and taking precautions. But I watched it from home. And so it was really fun. I mean, a 3-day seminar that was just full of energy. And you are just an incredible, well, as everyone has seen so far, you're a rah-rah kind of guy. Have you always been a rah-rah kind of guy, or is this something that you developed as part of your style and your personality?
Oh, I think I've always been like that. I will tell you, though, Clem, and it's important for me to say this. What you see on the outside doesn't always reflect the struggle that's on the inside. So, for example, I'm having a great day, okay? I'm in the middle of a promotion right now. My friend, Brian Tracy, who's a big-time speaker and author, written 91 books, and I are getting together to work on a product together. We're launching something next week called Top Gun Speaker, and he's promoting it to his list of 500,000 people. So it's kind of a fun week, to see all the sales come in and new customers, and we have a webinar coming up that's really big. Well, this morning, Zoom, my entire Zoom account went down, and I'm talking there were several hundred people who tried to register for the Zoom thing that didn't go through. And first of all, it was very frustrating. Anytime technology doesn't work for you, it's frustrating. And the second thing I said, and I said this to a friend of mine, I said, am I like jinxed or something, or cursed, or like, is there some reason why bad things always seem to happen to me? Now, just so you know, that was a total baloney. That's a lie, right? I'm not jinxed or cursed or bad. Good things happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, but sometimes enough things happen where you're like, what the heck? And I told my wife at breakfast, I was very frustrated, and my team was working on it. It wasn't their fault. It wasn't my fault. Nobody's fault. And I told my wife, I said, it's going to work out. And even if it doesn't work out, it's going to work out, And that's been my philosophy. Now, I will tell you, it took me about an hour this morning to get myself mentally back into a positive space, where I was operating. So externally, I've always been very positive, encouraging, and I have a generally a very optimistic outlook on life and the world. Internally, though, there's always this battle. And I always encourage entrepreneurs to understand that everyone's experiencing this battle, that negative self-talk, that feeling of sort of unworthiness sometimes that entrepreneurs feel. Sometimes entrepreneurs feel very alone. You don't know who to turn to for advice. You feel unresourceful sometimes. You're not sure, how do I even get this done? That's normal. Those are normal feelings. And the only mistake you can make as an entrepreneur is to go inside and keep all those feelings inside of you. Because if you truly feel alone, the best way to not feel alone is to be connected. If you feel resourceless, the best way to solve that is to connect with people who have resources for you, like in a mastermind group or an event like the one you went to. And so, yeah, I mean, in general, I've been pretty positive in life in general, but oftentimes it doesn't reflect the internal struggle that goes on. And I've been very transparent with my followers and my list about that internal struggle. Like, for example, during COVID, I was transparent about the fact that, it's hard. It was hard to watch our country go through what we went through. And it's hard to watch the division where there shouldn't be division. There's people who have been friends for 20 years and now they're not friends anymore because one person believes one thing about vaccines and another person believes another thing. And I'm like, those belief systems shouldn't separate us. Our love for each other and community should be enough that we could disagree, but we can disagree as friends. And I have some of my best friends I disagree completely 100% on almost every political issue, and we still can have a beer together. And we can still honor each other as individuals and human beings. And the crazy thing about it is I've been friends with some of those people long enough that I've kind of changed my mind on some things, and they've changed their mind on some things. And we've become more compassionate towards each other, but we've also gotten better at our viewpoint, because the truth is the hard right, hard left, they're wrong. They're both wrong, and it's not even in the middle. Sometimes it's a solution way the heck out in who knows where. My point, though, is our ability as entrepreneurs to share not only the external, but the internal is really important. And I know that's really helped me. It helped me today. It helped me today a lot. Yeah.
I think your relationships, though, your long-term relationships are those that may differ from how you think and have convinced you in other ways to maybe adjust some of your own thoughts. That's that window that we are looking for from politics, I believe, in Washington, is we want those that would cross the aisle, that would have the beer, that would close the room and just work it out and not come out till they, accomplish something. And we're lacking that tremendously right now. The reason I bring that up, because I understand one of your goals is to become president of the United States.
Yeah. Not even a goal. That's what's going. I tell people that's not something I want to do. That's something I'm going to do. Someday crazy. I will work in the White House, hopefully for 8 years. And then, whoever was working with me there can do it for another 8 years. And just so you know, as you're listening to this, I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Democrat. I am neither of those. I chose quite some time ago that I wasn't. And by the way, whatever your choice is fine with me. I just chose that I realized that I was letting my opinions be formed by a group of people that I didn't know. so all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to believe that because everybody else believes it. So I decided to look at each issue independently of the issue and decide on my own what I wanted to decide. And so, yeah, I'm not even in the middle. I'm not anywhere. I'm not on the line because I don't believe in two dimensions, So, and that's like another whole podcast all by itself. But I do believe we are, as a country, we are better than we've been acting. I think the reason we act the way we do right now is, if you go into a home, I've certainly visited people like this, and I'm sure you have too. You go into a home where the parents are constantly yelling at each other. There's one thing I can guarantee you, which is the kids are going to be yelling at each other too, because the children are only going to take their instruction from what the parents do. That's just what they do. And so if I go into a home and the kids are yelling at each other all day, it's a pretty good bet the parents also have been yelling at each other all day. Well, part of the issue in our country is our leadership, who are supposed to be acting like adults, are acting like children. And when your leaders act like children, you can't expect the children to act like adults, And so, yeah, there's some major issues on the streets of our country. And there's really big issues in a lot of the states. And the reason why is we have poor leaders. And the reason we have poor leaders is because we don't elect people based on integrity anymore. We elect people based on the issue. And so we look at our issues and we go, all right, who's going to be the person who takes this issue? And the truth is, your issue comes up in Washington maybe 1 out of every 1,000 discussions. So what happens in Afghanistan, or what happens in Iraq, or what happens with the taxation code, or what happens with private property, or what happens with personal liberties or freedoms, or what happens with medical freedom or not freedom, those discussions, the next thing we're going to talk about as a country, we didn't talk about it in the election because we don't know what the next thing's going to be.
Exactly.
And so instead of picking people on your issue, pick people of integrity, pick people with a proven track record. And by the way, integrity is nothing more than doing what you say you're going to do. That's simple, right? And let me tell you, I don't care what side you're on. There is not a single president that we've had in the last 40 years that didn't say they were going to do something and then not do it. Okay? And not just the one now, because the one now did that too, okay? But the one before that, and the one before that, and the one before that, because they've learned that we have very short memories.
Exactly. Yeah.
So man, I could talk about this for a while, but that's about it. So my vision is really to bring the country back together. Let me just put it that way.
Well, you're going to need a lot of faith and a lot of people with the faith in you. Let's talk about faith and when it turned for you towards Christianity and since this is all about amazing greats and the sense of the higher power, and when did that influence you? When did you become a Christian and a follower?
Yeah, I mean, everything in my life is formed by faith, much like everything in everyone's life is formed by faith. What you believe becomes the thing that you do, and the thing that you do becomes the result in your life. Okay, so I'm going to talk about spiritual faith in just a moment, but I wanted to set that foundation. It's really important as we go into this discussion for you to understand that there is a way that you believe right now as you're listening to our show today, and the result that you're having in your life is a direct result of the way you believe. So if you're not making as much money as you want to, if you're not impacting as many people as you want to, if you're not having the kind of relationships that you want to, it all comes back to your result, comes back to a way of acting, and a way of acting goes to a way of believing, okay? And that does come into spirituality. It comes into how you view yourself, how you view God. There are 6 core areas that I teach people to properly correlate their viewpoint and their view of the world. For example, how you view God is really important. How you view yourself is really important. How you view money is really important. How you view purpose is really important. How you view your time is really important. Those are the calibration points that affect a result. And I've been a believer in God since I was 8. My dad, who was a basketball referee, was introduced to Christianity and to Jesus by a guy named George Tolles, a longtime friend and mentor of mine. He's in his 90s now, still just incredibly influential person up in Seattle. And my dad came and said, "Look, this is the gospel. Jesus died for your sins, and you're a sinner." And I was 8, and I didn't have a problem understanding that concept, frankly. And he said, "But you get this free pass, when you believe in him." And I was totally on board. And I believe in the Bible as it's written. I believe in the historical Jesus. Sometimes people give this like mythical teacher business. I'm like, there are a lot of people eyewitnesses of this guy. And I believe he did what he said he was going to do. And I believe it because I read it, but I believe it because I've seen it with my own life and my own walk. And I teach my entrepreneurs how to approach spirituality from an entrepreneurial perspective. So I have people, Clem, who come to my events fully knowing that I talk about spirituality, who show up as atheists. And throughout the course of the event, they'll walk up to me with I do this little exercise in my events where I teach people how to hear from God. I call it how to ask God questions about your business and get answers. And I'll have atheists walk up to me with 2 pages of notes. And they go, "I have 2 pages of notes from God this morning. I'm an atheist. How do you explain that?" And I say, "Well, you're the atheist. You explain it." So, and I will just tell you, I have encouraged and seen a lot of people who, and interestingly enough, the one that I just mentioned there, this woman, every Friday, she spends an hour. This is a person who considers herself an atheist, by the way, which is kind of funny. She spends an hour every Friday talking with God. I said, "Francine, I think you pray more than most Christians I know. Hour a week, man. Come on. So you know what someone calls themselves and what they are based on their actions are very different. And God is very patient with people too, which is kind of fun. But yeah, my spirituality has formed my view of the world. And I will tell you that most philosophically based belief systems get it wrong, and most religiously based belief systems get it wrong. And let me explain what I mean in 45 seconds or less. The world philosophy says there's this universe, and you're pretty much God, and your job is to just like realize that you're God and take a hold of that, but the religious side goes like this: you're just a wretch of a person, you're awful, God's really good, and somehow he loves you, but as well as I do, not that much, and both of those viewpoints are tragically wrong, and both of those viewpoints, those belief systems, will lead to an action that gets you the wrong result. Okay. Right. If you believe that you are I hear Christians say this all the time. It's unbelievably unbiblical. They will say, I am just a sinner saved by grace. That doesn't show up in the Bible anywhere. He never says you're just a sinner. That doesn't happen anywhere. God says, you're like a bride to me. You're like, I'm like my friend. Those are the kind of ways that God communicates to you. So this belief system is wrong. This other belief system is wrong. And what's true is we are on this earth to co-create, to co-partner, to partner with God to get great things done. And I've experienced sometimes God comes alongside and I say to God, what do you want for me? And he says to me, well, what do you want for you? And he's interested in the answer to the question, because God understands. See, there's a verse in Psalm, that's Psalm 37:4, I believe, that says, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Here's the thing about that. When you delight in God, the desires of your heart become his desires. Your desires and his become the same thing. So you don't know if you thought of it first or he thought of it first, because you both thought of it. That's partnering with God. So maybe you want to get a piece of land and turn it into something amazing. Maybe you want to grow a business that helps millions of people. Maybe you want to write a book that changes the world. Maybe you want to stand up on stages and share a message of inspiration. Maybe you want to be an amazing parent. Maybe you want to help other people be an amazing parent. Maybe you want to see poverty go away in Africa. Maybe you want to see poverty go away in Seattle. Maybe you have a vision to do that. Well, you know what? Maybe that vision was planted there in the very beginning of your life by God. He put it there and it's grown into a little seed. And now you say, this is what I want to do. And when you say, this is what I want to do, it sounds super selfish until you realize that your desires have just become God's desires. Or what really happened is God's desires became your desires. You can't tell the difference between the two. And so when you meet a person who's really alive, you meet a person who's so in line with the Spirit of God that they can't tell who came up with the idea first, right? And let me tell you, if it's God's will, it's God's bill. So if you're struggling financially, when you line up in that place, you wait and see the resources come your way, because God knows how to fund his projects. You know what I'm saying? He's a pretty good investor. So your job, and this is one of the things I do at my events, your job is to find yourself in alignment with that direction, the place that river's going, jump into it and flow, okay? The place that I found that is myself is in biblical Christianity. But like I said, people come to my events from all walks of life and experience the change, because like gravity, like the law of gravity, it works no matter what, okay? The way that I teach this stuff, when you implement it, like gravity, you jump off a building, you're going to fall no matter what you believe. No matter you believe in gravity or not, no matter what you're going to, and the system that I teach essentially operates like a law, because it's how God created the world. Fun stuff, huh?
In a sense, you're a bit of a preacher, aren't you? The fact that you have the same skills to spread the word of the gospel, you have the same skills to express those thoughts, and you have the same skills to put action to it with great results.
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to those three things, right? What you believe turns into what you do turns into the result that you have in your life. I always tell people, if what you have right now is not what you want, go backwards to what you believe. It's always there. It's always there. And it's interesting, Clem, I've worked now hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs, obviously, at my events, but I've worked one-on-one, my coaching members, with almost now 500. I think it's 470 roughly one-on-one coaching members. And if I'm talking to you one-on-one, I can tell within about 10 minutes where the barrier is on the belief side, how you see yourself, how you see your business, how you see money. And usually we can get through that in 10, 20 minutes. Next thing you know, you're on your way to success. And that's why I always tell people, if you're hitting a wall, you go find somebody who can get you through that wall, because people can do that.
Yeah. And that goes way back to your readings as a child, the early days of being around all these successful people. You didn't know it, but you were absorbing then. You were watching what they were doing as successful people and how they got there.
Yeah. I mean, if your belief system is we always win, you're going to win. I mean, you're going to win. You're going to win a lot of games or you're going to win at life. You're going to be able to, it's not that you don't have obstacles. I mean, it's not like Zoom's not going to ever go down for you and you're going to lose 100 people trying to register for your event or whatever. Remember what I said, Clem, it's going to be okay. And even if it's not okay, it's going to be okay. So easier said than done, but I did it this morning.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
You know.
We're heading towards the end of this our time slot here. Your last book was The Warrior, Understanding the Furious Love of God Who Fights for You. The Warrior, Understanding the Furious Love of the God Who Fights for You. I've not read that book yet. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. So I always tell people, so first of all, if you're interested in reading my writing, and you should, because it's pretty good and I'm biased, but that doesn't mean it's not true. Okay, if you want to start someplace, start at my latest book, which is 21 Day Miracle. It's fun, fast book, and you'll get a good result from the book. Now, if you go back 6 years before 21 Day Miracle, there's a book that I wrote called Warrior. It's a Christian book. It's called, the subtitle is Understanding the Furious Love of the God Who Fights for You. And in that book, I basically go through the Christian Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then Acts, and then finally Revelation, and show you the 6 stages of becoming a warrior. And I show you how God fought his battles and how you ought to fight your battles too. I will just tell you fully transparently, it's a really good book. It's a fun book. 21 Day Miracle is funny and you will laugh. Warrior is not quite that same. Okay, so I changed a lot in 6 years and I became a lot more lighthearted in my communication. So I always recommend read 21 Day Miracle first, because you'll get a lot more of my personality. Yeah. And Warrior is a lot more serious. Because that's kind of how I was back then. So
yeah, I think the 21 Day Miracle does represent you for sure. It's like
it's funny because
to me right now. Yeah,
I have people who email me and they're like, "I just read 21 Day Miracle. I'm gonna go read all your books." And half the time I'm like, "No, don't do that. Just be happy with the one you read." But it just goes to show. I mean, I teach entrepreneurs, right? I always tell people, like, you know what? It took me 4 books to get to the really good one. And I liked my first 4 books, but it's
all a progression, and this is where you are right now. So that's great. I have I have over your left shoulder, well, it looks like an F-18 that is flying upside down. I also see an F-18, I'm assuming, that is also upside down on your T-shirt.
Yeah,
this is because I was inverted.
This is because I was inverted. This is a line from Top Gun. So I just wore this today because Top Gun 2 is coming out soon, and I thought I'd respect the brand. For those of you who are listening to this on audio, you should watch one of my videos on YouTube. I've got a lot of stuff, American flag behind me, my flight jacket, my flight helmet. I've got a tail hook back there, my old license plate for my Corvette, which is Deuteronomy 8:18, which is worth looking up. Over this shoulder, I've got this American Eagle thing that one of my good friends and subscribers sent to me. So there's a lot of fun stuff that's sitting there behind me. But we were talking about 21 Day Miracle. By the way, the website is edrushbook.com. So if you just go type in Ed Rush and then the word book, which is basically like the easiest website in the world to remember. Even if you're on an elliptical right now, you can remember Ed Rush Book. Go there. Not only will you get the least expensive version of my book, but you also get a free membership site that I usually sell, or I would normally sell for about $97. I'm going to give you that for free because you listen to the show. And that's my gift to you, and just encourage you to keep listening to this amazing show. These guys are doing an amazing job. They're working hard to put good content in front of you. So that's my gift to you.
Well, thank you, Ed. Ed Rush, maybe one day president. Oh, not, I didn't say maybe.
For sure.
One day president of the United States of America. God bless you, Ed. It's such a pleasure having you today on Amazing Grades.
Yeah, buddy. God bless, Clem. Thank you.
Wow. Another amazing story. Thanks for spending some time with us here. And if you like this episode, please hit like and share it with your family and friends. Thanks to our guest host, Clem Daniels, to Ed Rush, and to George Tolles. And until next time, God bless you.